Morning, everybody. Welcome to Smack the Markets live stream for Wednesday, the 18th of November. So as usual, before we get started, if I can just ask you just to take a few moments to have a scan through the risk disclaimers, make sure that you're comfortable with them. In brief, these sessions are not intended to be any kind of trading advice. They're purely for education and interest purposes only. If you do wish to consider trading the markets, please make sure that you understand the risks involved and seek advice if you need it. I've just been working through these markets with Fergal here, and there's a few things sort of interestingly setting up at the moment. So if you've taken a look, if you're in the trading room, take a look at the posts in the trading room that have just been posted. Okay. Morning, Michael. Morning, Martin. So let's take a look at what's going on. Certainly seen a few things livening up a little bit now, aren't we? Now we're seeing the dollar sort of confirm its move. The indexes are now sort of pushing on to those highs again. Big questions as to whether they're going to be able to break out to new highs on this leg of the move anyway. So first of all, let's take a look at the US equity markets and take a look at what's sort of going on here, because we know that again, this is the cash market, but we know that the futures market up here, we have a level which is 30,000, and the market is now pretty much on the nose on that on the futures, a little bit above that on the cash market, but price has rallied up. It's had huge rallies here on sort of vaccine development, sort of euphoria. Pretty much every time frame here, these are looking rather sort of stretched now. So the sort of thing that I'm looking at here also is if we can start to come down the time frames. I'm wondering, and as I've mentioned to you before, I'm considering whether we're going to see or get enough momentum to actually sort of break through this. Now, the big thing we need to be careful of course, is surprise news. There are other vaccines in development, and when those come to sort of market, or when we get sort of positive news flow on those, they're likely to have the similar sort of reaction to what we've sort of seen in the past too, which has been big bursts of momentum. Having said that, until we get something like that, I do wonder whether we're going to start to see a bit of weakness coming in here. So if we just come down and start to take a look at these a little bit lower, you can see, just looking at the sort of price action here, we can see on the 4-hour time frame that prices moved up. It sort of tested this level. This was the first test of that 30,000. We've got almost the second one here. Now the market sort of rolled over, and you know, in any case, I suppose a technician would look at this and say, well, we've got a sort of ascending triangle forming here. We could be looking for a breakout higher. I think, again, we need to keep our eyes and ears peeled on this. And even if we do get a breakout to the high side and we get a push up and retest of that 30 level, then again, we've got some significant sort of divergence starting to come in here too. We might start to see a bit of weakening off. Now, to the short side, I think there is some fair potential to the short side. Let's just have a look at what these look like on the lower time frames. So on the 60-minute chart, again, I'm not a particularly great lover of sort of sloping trend lines, but I'm sure if you sort of sketch something in from this high here, testing these highs, you can see that we've certainly got a range here of a sloping sort of level. something like so. So we've got a sort of an area here, and certainly sort of a channel that the market seems to be sort of forming itself into at the moment. I think getting a breakout above this would be particularly positive for price action. And again, that could help to see this for that sort of few hundred pip move up to sort of test that 30 level. Otherwise, if we sort of take out these lows, then I think we could start to see some pressure building to the short side. Either way, I'd be quite sort of keen on sort of positions either way. Now on, let's come back out of this. Let's have a look at this on the now this morning, these on the sort of very lower time frames are starting to look in a little bit more on the bullish side. You know, if we have a look at this, we've had a burst of momentum on the Dow, still stuck within this range, and again, I think we need to see that sort of move above this sort of level really. So let's come back now. I'm just keeping an eye on a couple of trades that we've just called in the trading room. So if we just take a quick look at these, so dollar yen. So we know with dollar yen, we flagged this up earlier in the week, that the market was getting back into this sweet spot on the weekly chart, and was looking nice to the short side. And that weekly trend now continuing to play out, or what we expected to happen here on the this week, is now starting to come to fruition, which is that the market came up to a sort of resistance area here on the weekly. And here on the lower time frames, the big levels that we had were the 104, somewhere around here. You can see we've got these previous support areas here, and the market's now managed to sort of take those areas out. And if we just zoom out of this, you get sort of some sort of perspective of where sort of price is. So underneath that 104 area, there's not a great deal of support and resistance structures in the way until we start to look down to these lows. That's 103, well, just around 103, and then much further as well. So there's plenty of distance to the short side on this, potential distance. So we've got a nice trading window underneath price. If we come to the 4-hour time frame, again, we can see price breaking underneath there within that nice window again. And again, if we come down to the lower time frames, we've got trend structures which are looking rather nice with geometry, and the setup that we just called in the trading room here, which Fergal's just posted, has been this setup entry on this candle here on the 15-minute chart. So tell me, Fergal, are we up to 1-to-1 on that yet? It's looking fairly close. So dollar Sing has also fired off as well short, and this is obviously all in theme with the weakness in the US dollar at the moment. We've got strengths and weaknesses supporting the dollar yen to the short side today. or this morning I should say, as these things can change. Now the other thing, I'm not sure whether Fergal posted it, but actually if we looked at the fib study on this, and you'll see that the market actually sort of pulled back into a sort of a nice fib cluster here, back into this sort of area. So we had the sort of 38 there. Bring it down to the next sort of level. We had the 61.8% fib level clustering in there as well. So we had a number of fib levels clustering with this sort of turning point as well. So it's almost there, is it? Okay, good. Okay, so what's the plan on managing this? Let's have a look. So if we get an entry in here, I mean, on the 15-minute chart, it's quite a good trend, quite a nice sort of structure. We're getting certainly a position here would be quite nice. Down to the sort of with the 1 hour chart, it's not back into this sort of 1 hour area. So again, we've got to be a bit careful with that. And if we come to these higher time frames, there's clearly no areas here. Well, we're not back in with any sort of value areas on these time frames here. So what I would be looking at is covers, as you know, the rules, cover risk at 1-to-1, at least cover risk at 1-to-1, or book 100% profit. If you fancy holding on to this for a bit more, then again, we've got to be rather nimble with it, because we're not picking into a swing turning point. So we've got to be careful with that. And really the trade is on a 15-minute time frame. Well, okay, 15 and a 30-minute time frame. That's where the geometry is. So that means if we get positioned on it, or if you are positioned on this, I should say, take that. It'd be a good idea to, as a good plan to manage that, would be to run stops behind future sort of swing lows produced on the 15 or the 30-minute time frame. Okay, so the other similar trade that we've Fergal called was the dollar sing, and that's looking sort of pretty nice as well. Again, both of these that you can't see on these time frames here, both of these setups actually cluster very, very nicely with pivot points. So the Smack the Markets pivot points, if I try to highlight here on dollar yen, where's that pivot? It's actually right at the high here. So the market actually just came up to, that's about where the pivot is, which is at 103.979, which is what I've got here on the Smack the Markets pivots. And you know, that was right at the top there of that turning point. Okay, well done, Fergal. Let's come back and let's take a look at some other markets here. So, by the way, if you've got markets that you want to take a look at, that you're looking at, please post them in the post them into the chat, and I'll take a look at those as well. So let's have a look at metals, because we did speak about metals on Monday, and it was silver. Silver's my favorite one at the moment, and you can see that these have been sort of fairly bullish, although we've been stuck in within that sort of consolidation. I did sort of highlight that the bit that I was still rather keen on here was that even though we've had these sharp sell-offs, silver has still maintained its higher lows forming here. So again, we're getting into some sort of areas here where we could be looking for a bit of a breakout back up to the top end of this range. So that level up here is around that $26 level. That's the blue line up here, and just testing these highs. So we've got a sort of a window here up towards that 26 price point. Let me just come out of that. You can see that a little bit more clearly here on the daily time frame. And then, so we've got resistance there, which has been previous support. If we get it through there, then we've got a nice sort of trading window to the high side. I mean, wherever we look to mark this in, I think there's, we can see there's not a great deal of resistance. There's some, but not a great deal. So let's drill into this and see if we've got some bit more detail on these lower time frames. So the 4 hour is starting to turn around now. Again, just sort of confirming these higher lows each time, which is very nice, and also at technical levels, which is quite nice as well. I don't really see an entry in here. There's a nice place for a stop underneath the lows here, but not really a good place for an entry. A good technical entry, I don't think. Not on the 4 hour. Let's come down to the 1 hour. Let's bring this down to the, is the 15 going to be too low, I wonder? Probably going to be a bit low. Let's have a look, go back to that 1 hour. So there's a bit of a level on this around that. I think we've got it marked in around here, which is around 24,600, and that's the 24,600 on the future contract. So clusters in with these lows and also previous support and resistance. Again, if I zoom right the way out of this, you can see back here, if we come back into this, so above this area really here is, I think, a bit more of a safer place to be looking at positioning. So again, we've had a bit of a pullback after the recent move. Let's see if we can get a bit of a trend starting to form here, get above this level, and then we could start to maybe look at sort of positioning. 26 is off the chart up here, so 26 is a long way away, and you can see that we got a huge amount of distance here. Just looking for a cleaner entry into this. Euro Kiwi, Great British Pound, yep, so we'll look at those. Michael, dollar Kiwi CAD. Let's have a look at Kiwi CAD. Yeah. Because Kiwi is one of the strongest at the moment, isn't it, to this morning? So we're going to break out, nice breakout on this this morning. So the I think I had the Kiwi as one of the strongest currencies this morning when I first did the strengths and weaknesses. I don't know if it still is, but it's certainly a very strong market this morning. So okay, so let's have a look at this on the 4 hour time frame and start to mark our levels in. I think we've certainly got some interesting structures in here. And let's run our fib study in here. So our breakout level here, which is around 0.930, that sort of area here, which coincides with these this sort of breakout area, ties up nicely with a 61.8% fib level. Unfortunately, I don't have a pivot point at that point. That would have been really nice. But having said that, that's still quite a nice area. Clusters with the moving averages as well. So we've got a number of things all tying up here. And actually, that probably looks rather nice here on the 15-minute time frame as well. So I think even, again, let's just take a... So I think we've got a bit of a zone here. If we note there, the 50 period moving, the 50% fib level is here, and the 61.8% down here. So I think this zone here, if we get a retracement back into this zone, that's going to be a nice area to start to look for entry opportunities. And it will also give us a nice sort of areas here. We got low, higher low, higher low, higher low. If we get a nice higher low in here, that would sort of be particularly sort of nice. So Fergal's saying the Kiwi is still the strongest. Thanks for that, Fergal. So it makes sense to be looking at Kiwi trades. So that's a nice one, Michael. And we'll certainly keep an eye on Kiwi CAD there. So let's go to the so Euro Kiwi. I think I had Euro Kiwi down on my list. I did. So I've got Euro Kiwi on my watch list this morning. I think that was one that we covered in the morning prep. I think Fergal covered that in the morning prep. Let's just let me find it. So this, I think, is a trade. It sort of makes, or the market sort of makes sense on the higher time frames as well. So if we just have a look here at the weekly chart, again, I'll sort of zoom back on this a little bit, and maybe if I mark a level in here, you can see that there is previous support and resistance all the way through this price action. If you take a look at the sort of level through here, previous support here, resistance here, support, support, resistance, resistance, support, resistance, all the way through here. So it's a very significant level. Below that level, well, the next sort of price point brings it into around 160, or just above 165, sort of 60. I've got 165, sort of 75 area. You can see there's previous support and resistance through here, and each time the market's sort of taking these levels out, in between them, you can see the past few times there's not a lot in the way. You know, the market's sort of gone from one to the other. So which means that there's some fairly decent sort of free space underneath that price point. So if we come down to the daily time frame, let's just drill into this a bit closer. So there's our breakout level there on the daily. Indicators all looking good to the short side. So again, convergence to the short side. At the moment here, any trade set up on the daily is going to be an entry on the break and a stop up here. So it's it is rather wide. Let's get something a bit closer. We come down to the 4-hour time frame. There's our level again. So again, we've got a potential here. You could take a sort of bracket this sort of price action. Let's see what we've got a little bit lower. Now that move has been sort of fairly swift in the past sort of 4 hours. So what could we do here? The way I look at this is that this level is quite a significant level going up to the very high time frames, going up to sort of daily and weekly time frames. So it's a daily or weekly structure point in price action, which means it is strong. So that means if the market could have just a little bounce off this. If it does have a little bounce off it from a daily perspective, from a daily chart or a weekly chart, any kind of setup on these lower time frames is just going to be taken out. So what I prefer to do here, particularly if we've seen that large move here over the past sort of couple of hours, you can see down to this price point, price is quite overextended. So this is a typical time where I prefer to see either two things. Either the market is going to bounce off this level and consolidate, so we get some lower highs forming here as the market consolidates on top of this level, gives us maybe a tighter opportunity to be able to and builds up momentum more and pressure on this level for a breakout short, or price breaks through this level, but because it's we leave it for it to break out through this level, but it's such a strong level that we're almost certainly going to see some sort of pullback, particularly as we've seen quite a lot of overextension here. So if we're patient, wait for the break, capture the pullback, then that could give us an opportunity to perhaps get positioned around this level on the retracement and get a much tighter entry. So that's the sort of setup that I'm preferring and looking at here on Euro Kiwi. Otherwise, we're looking at stop locations which are, quite a long way away. We're going to need easy 1-to-1s down to these lows and maybe more before we get if we start to put stops up above these highs up here. So that's my sort of plan here for Euro Kiwi. What other ones were we suggested? Cable. So Great British Pound got some nice strength in it today, hasn't it? And of course, this is all on the optimism of the Brexit trade negotiations, hopefully coming to some sort of conclusion after all this time. Certainly we're hearing reports of it at the moment, and that's likely to be supportive of Great British Pound, particularly if we do get some sort of conclusion on this. So again, let's have a look. So I had Great British Pound and I had and Pound Swissy on my watch list from the morning scan that I did. So let's have a look at both of these. Now, both of these are strengths and weakness supporting them. So I had the Swissy as weak this morning as well, and the US dollar weak as well. So both of these forming strengths and weakness plays. So cable looking strong. We're above that 132.50 level, which was just underneath here. Just around here. let's see what we've got on the so from a swing perspective, markets are well into play at the moment. I don't see any entries on these time frames, so we really need to be looking at time frames like the 1 hour, 30-minute and the 15-minute. So we've got some reasonable geometry forming on these time frames now. So if we have a look at the 1 hour, just coming into play, the same as the 30-minute, probably the 15-minute also looking sort of quite reasonable as well. So the 15-minute here, I think on any of these, clearly what we need to see is a good pull back into geometry and back into the moving averages. Somewhere between the 10 and the 20 period moving average is what I'd be looking for. So not seeing any sort of setups, entry opportunities on these at the moment, but I think these lower time frame trends are certainly ones to perhaps sort of keep an eye on. Now I had also pound Swissy, and pound Swissy I thought was looking a bit more easier on the price action. So again, if we just remind ourselves what the higher time frames look like, quite bullish, well not quite bullish but very bullish. Next sort of points of call, structure points, probably up here around 122. So around that 122 area, as we can see at the high here, not a lot in the way otherwise. If we come down to the 4 hour, we can see that on this particular market compared to the dollar, Great British Pound against the dollar, that market was looking much more overextended than we have here on pound Swissy, and this one has just sort of recently broken out of this sort of ranging, sort of higher ranging but very much ranging market, so it's not quite so overextended. Let's come down to the 1 hour chart. Again, starting to look much better in here. So since the market sort of broke out this morning, convergence on the indicators looking good still. Let's bring that down to the 15. So, okay. That's a nice low. Okay, so if we see weakness back into some of these highs, back into this sort of area, probably around the 50% fib level, clustering with this sort of 120 sort of 80 area. That's a nice area here where we could start to, would be a nice area for potential opportunities if we get that pull back into that price point. So we're starting to see a little bit of weakness coming in at the moment. Certainly one to keep an eye on. So very nice. So I don't know, sorry, don't know what your name is, but good markets, and we've got these on our watch list as well. So we picked up these. So we're all looking on the looking at the same things, which is good. Okay, so what other, anyone else got any other markets they'd like to take a look at this morning? Before we start to wrap up. Another one that I would, that no one's mentioned is the one of the markets we've been looking at in the trading room today, or had on the trade in the watch list in the trading room, has been the Swiss yen, and that again is sort of playing out sort of quite nicely. So if we have a look at that's Swiss yen. So this is, and I still think there's some potentially some more in this. This is sort of breaking down quite nicely. Higher time frames, not wonderful from a trend perspective, but again, we can see that we've got sort of weakness in price. The same here on these 4 hour time frames. The area that we were particularly looking at was up here, and a breakout, and now that the market's moving in that direction. So we've got an interesting candle. I'm sure that must be a bad tick on that candle there. But we had a sort of a breakout of this level through here and a continuation short. So this is sort of coming now into that sort of 114 area. So I've got 113, around 113,900, which is the next sort of decision point. So that's just a little bit lower from where price is at the moment. Then we've got another decision point underneath this. Maybe if I come up to the daily, you sort of get you can see through here, previous support and resistance. Then the next level that I have is at 113, which is around here. Again, these are historical levels. They go back many, many years, and we've got another level around that price point there. So there is some free space, plenty of free space if we see more weakness through in these markets, and that's looking sort of nice again now. The same with Great British Pound against the Kiwi. I know we had a pretty nice trade on that earlier on in the week on Monday. The market has rolled back over again. It's sort of showing weakness again. But the only thing that's sort of making me prefer other markets to new positions on pound Kiwi is that Great British Pound is strong at the moment. If the news media is going to be, if there's any sort of truth in that we may hear positive news flow on Brexit negotiations or Brexit trade negotiations, that's likely to put added strength into Great British Pound. And then you've got a scenario where you've got Great British Pound being strong today and also the Kiwi being strong today as well. So you're trading strength against strength. So even though that market is continuing to weaken at the moment, it's fighting an upward battle. So it would be other markets that might be a little bit more easier would be maybe the Euro Kiwi. So some of those markets that we sort of spoke about a little bit earlier. Hi, Satar. Glad you could join us. Will Rolls-Royce ever recover? Martin, I have no idea. Well, I haven't booked any flights lately. No one has, I suppose. It's that's one of those multi-million-dollar questions. I'm just waiting to be able to, pick up a Silver Ghost or a Phantom at Poundland, but haven't found one yet. Okay, super. So, Fergal, has that dollar yen hit target 1 yet? It's getting down to that, almost down to that sort of price point, I think. It's so dollar yen has hit target 1 now. Well done, Fergal. That was a nice little trade for a Wednesday morning. Good. Okay, so that's a good example of positioning and the types of trades, some of the types of trades that we take in the trading room if you're not a member. And for those of you who are, then you know that we called that earlier, and hopefully you managed to do your own analysis on it and act accordingly. Super. Okay, fantastic. Look, it's been a great session. Let's start to wrap it up now. Otherwise, we can go on forever. And we'll take a look at do another rescan and take another look at what's going on in the trading room as well. Fantastic, everybody. Hope you find it useful, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now. Thanks.